T minus 20 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. It is week 2 of college football. Out of the Tunnel is back, unlike the Queen of England. We are super excited to bring this show to you guys. Unfortunately, Slade was not able to join us today. He's taking a couple days of mourning because he misses his queen, which is a bit sad, isn't it? Old chap is not here. No, he's at work because work is apparently more important than doing this for free.
Goes on vacation and then comes back and goes straight to work. What the hell?
I don't know who does that. But Nick and I are here. We are super excited to bring you guys another episode of Out of the Tunnel. Thank you so much for joining us. Week 1, we had a lot of fun with that. As we said on our podcast on Tuesday, we hit over 30 viewers. So more than pleased about that. And we hope we get even more this week. But we have a lot to talk about. Huge week 1 in college football. I've argued an even just as big week 2 with a lot of marquee matchups. Lots to talk about. So Nick, why don't we get right into it, buddy?
Yeah, I'm here for it. Sorry, I'm half distracted. I'm tweeting out the link for this. So
That's okay. Well, we'll start with your headline. So you posed a question to us the other day, and I want to get your thoughts first on what you think the first 4 playoff teams in your mind are after week 1.
yeah, so as it sits right now, like I said, so in my notes I said if the first 3 teams are the first 3 teams everybody thinks they're going to be, so Alabama, Ohio State, and Georgia in whatever order you happen to feel. But for that 4th team, again, anything could happen. Either one of those 3 teams I just listed, there's a possibility, though very slim, that they don't make it. But with those 3 teams sitting there after week 1, I know we're going to do a little bit of reaching today because that's what everybody enjoys to do after week 1. But after week 1, who is your 4th playoff team? And as it sits right now, I have Notre Dame. I think that they held up very well against Ohio State minus 2 drives. And I think as they find their rhythm throughout the season, they're going to be one of the best teams in college football. Their only loss, if they were to win out, their only loss is going to be against OSU, who we presume is going to make the college football playoffs. So, and being week 1, that gives them plenty of time to build back up to where they are or to where they want to be. So that's who I have as my 4th college football playoff team.
Yeah, I feel like Notre Dame's not a bad pick. Their biggest question mark for me is their offensive side of the ball. This is 2 games in a row now that we've watched their offense just completely shut down in the second half. I mean, they had that Ohio State game dead to rights. You know, if they could have put up even just one more score, I feel like the pressure would have been that much more on Ohio State. And I think they might have been able to walk out of Columbus with a win. But like I said, just like in the Fiesta Bowl, they had a great first half. They go into the locker room, they come out, and their offense is just ice cold. So that's definitely something they need to get fixed. I don't know what's going on with Tommy Reese in the second half here lately, but we will wait and see. They have a big game against USC coming up later in the year, and if that happens again, that could spell trouble for them. They also host Clemson at home in a couple weeks. So I mean, the schedule is there for them if they do run the table from here on out. Yeah, I think it's a very strong argument. They deserve to be in that 4th spot. During the week, a lot of people have been throwing out the name Clemson as the ACC favorite, and they should get into the playoffs. I still don't see it. I said this before the season. They might win the ACC, but I don't see them having less than a loss, or excuse me, more than 1 loss. Okay, they're gonna have at least 2
Yeah.
losses or more. It was a long night. I don't have my brain cells working yet, but I definitely see this being a 2-loss team. Wake Forest just got Sam Hartman back. That is going to be a lethal offense. We still need to wait and see, if he can fully get back in the swing. They have 2 weeks until that game, or I believe that's next week, actually. Yeah, 2 weeks. And so it's going to be very dangerous for Clemson going through the ACC this year. I think NC State has a great team. They didn't show it last week, but they definitely have the capability to be a great team. Now Clemson luckily gets that game at home, and like I said, they go to Notre Dame. And for me, the biggest question mark is still DJ Uiagalelei. Um, he looked terrible in that Georgia Tech game. Clemson was beating the brakes off of them, but they couldn't put points on the board because of DJ. They threw their true freshman QB in there, and he did great things with the offense. They were moving the ball a lot. I feel like they looked really, really good underneath his leadership. Um, Clemson's sticking with DJ this week. Granted, it's against Furman. If you struggle against Furman, I really think you should lose the starting job. But if they continue to leave him in their starter, I feel like there's going to be a game coming up, like the Wake Forest game or NC State, Notre Dame, whatever, where he digs them into a hole that their new freshman QB can't get them out of. And so there's definitely question marks around that team that until they get solved, I'm not putting Clemson in my top four.
Yeah.
For me, and again, granted, it was week 1, but with Oregon and Utah losing, I feel like USC is the Pac-12 leader right now. Now, granted, we still need to see what they look like against tougher and tougher opponents, and then that'll come up here shortly. But I would go with a team like them. Oklahoma State or Baylor for me is still up there. I think Baylor's probably my favorite right now until Oklahoma State proves they can beat them. But I definitely see a one-loss Big Ten team, or excuse me, one-loss Big 12 team, or a one-loss Pac-12 champion getting into the playoff, and that's who I would put there over Clemson right now. And if Notre Dame drops another game, I think I have Baylor probably as my 5th team right now.
Yeah.
USC is 6.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah. Moving on, we're gonna do buying or selling this week, Nick. And so I'm gonna give you a couple things, and we're both gonna answer it, but I mainly want to get your thoughts here. Just a couple week 1 headlines. Are we overreacting, to these situations, or is this something that you're believing in?
Oh, we love a
So
little week 1 overreaction.
yeah.
Let's get it.
So the first one: are you buying or selling that Florida is back?
So I'm buying, but I'm buying it at a discount here. I don't think we have, that you look at that team with like Tim Tebow and all them. I don't think we're quite there yet. But I do think that they're going to have a good season this year, especially starting this week. I think they're going to end up beating Kentucky for what I can only assume is their first win against a ranked opponent in a couple years at least. I do think they are going to be competing, and I think that they have a really good shot. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but for a conference championship at the end of the year, if they could get things together this year. So yeah, I'm buying at a discount.
Yeah. I would agree. I think this is going to be a contender in the SEC East. I don't think they're on the same level as Georgia. After last week, I don't think anybody is outside of Alabama. But I think this is going to be a very strong team this year. We're going to get to our picks here later. I went with Kentucky this week. I feel like they're going to be a little overconfident going to this game, and that can definitely shooting up the rankings from unranked 12th is almost unheard of unless you upset like a number 1 team. Listen, I understand there was a lot of expectations around Utah. I still feel like that was way too high of a jump, but that's just me. And
Yeah,
so
that was a bit much.
yeah,
I,
like you said, I'm definitely. I think this is going to be a much better team than last year. And I'm excited to see where they go, but I don't fully see them being like 100%. Like you said, like I'm not seeing Tim Tebow era. I'm not seeing playoff this year in their
yeah,
future. And Billy Napier is a great coach. He can definitely get them going in that direction. I wouldn't be surprised if 2-3 years from now we're talking about Florida being a perennial playoff team, but just not quite this year.
yeah.
But yeah, they're definitely not bottom dwellers in the SEC East this year. Moving on, the second buying or selling is that OSU is not on the same level as Georgia and Alabama after week 1.
So I'm gonna say I'm buying. I think that the past couple years, Georgia and Alabama have just had that extra level. You have kind of that top of the league, which you could think of, say, last year would be like Ohio State, Oregon, a couple other teams in there, and then you have Bama and Georgia. And I think the same's this year. Even though week 1 is week 1 when it comes to college football, they don't have preseason. Everybody comes out really with no in-game experience. I still think that if you're an Ohio State team, you look at Georgia and Bama, they came out and took care of business. There was no like slow start. There was no hiccups really through the game. Now, granted, Bama played a school for the blind compared to what they're used to, but especially you look at Georgia. I'm not going to say too much about that, um, but playing a better team than what Bama was playing and still beat the brakes off them. So you look at Ohio State, and yes, while I think Notre Dame is a contender, um, they came out and really against a team that was showing a lot of weaknesses, kind of like you talked about a couple minutes ago with Notre Dame. Like they have some things that they need to work together. And if you're Ohio State, whether you're playing Notre Dame or Oregon or Warford the first week, you need to have your shit together if you want to be competing against Alabama and Georgia. And I don't quite think that they do yet. And I'm not sure that throughout the season they're going to be able to get themselves to that level. Ohio State always has decent defenses, but not necessarily elite defenses. They might have one, two, maybe three players that get it done. But when you look at Georgia and Bama, they can put points up on the board in a hurry, and they can stop you from putting points on the board or even moving the ball. So when I think of those two teams, that's the kind of dominance that I think of, and I don't think Ohio State's there yet.
Yeah. I'm gonna sell for now. I think
Sorry, Jesse.
yeah, I think there's two ways to look at week one. One is maybe we're just severely, you know, not giving Notre Dame enough credit. Maybe they really do have a really good team. Marcus Freeman is just that good of a coach. They can rebound, and like you said earlier, they might be back in the playoffs this year. Um, Also, I'm partially selling because their offense wasn't 100%, especially after the first quarter of the game. JSN goes down early with an injury, doesn't come back. But I would say this is probably the best defense we're ever going to see out of Ohio State. And I don't want to say in history, but probably the last 10 years or so, and especially going forward for a few years with their new DC, Jim Knowles. Uh, like I said earlier, he held Notre Dame to 10 points in the first half and then shut them out in the second half. Um, I think they have great defensive backs. That was a key in this game. Um, so I if they played right now, I think Georgia beats them by 20. I don't think they're going to beat the brakes off like they did to Oregon, but I need to see more throughout the season to
Yeah,
let me get a full story. Let me see you go out there and beat Michigan, by a couple scores, for me to put you in that same element.
yeah,
But like I said, if I'm saying if they played today, like the college football play started today, and we had Georgia versus Ohio State, I'm taking Georgia by 20. But again, this is just because of what I've seen in week one.
yeah.
So I'm trying
Yeah, and I
to
don't want to
overreact.
sound disrespectful to that Ohio State defense. They're talented, they're good, but I don't personally think they're Georgia or Bama, which
Jesse,
is it's
hold on, Jesse. Absolutely, if they played right now, Georgia's winning by 20.
yeah,
I don't see, like I said, and this is just from what I've seen week one. Um,
yeah.
I
I
think
think they
Georgia's
could get there. They have all the
yeah.
pieces.
Yeah, I think the way Georgia's defense played last week, and I mean their offense was clicking. Like I said, I just haven't seen enough of Ohio State at 100% and against really good opponents. Like I said, we don't know how Notre Dame's going to shake up the rest of the season, especially Ohio State. But moving on to our next buying or selling, are you buying or selling the Pac-12 is dead?
Um, I want to be selling. I really do. I want to be mainly for your sake. But at this point, I gotta say buying. Um, they we talked about it a couple weeks ago. They're not trending in the right direction as far as being one of the big conferences that are going to stick around. We talked about the possibility of really going to two conferences. Um, however, all that shit shakes out. The Pac-12 really doesn't have much going on for it right now. You thought Oregon was up there, Utah, but they both took devastating losses in their own right in the first week. Now, granted, there's still a lot of season for them to get back up and bring things together, and there's a chance that they salvage it. But right now, I don't see anything trending in the right direction for the Pac-12, and I don't know how they're going to change it.
Yeah. Uh, I'm going to sell again for now. I'm not saying this year. I don't think they make the playoffs. I think USC takes a really stupid loss here in a few weeks. To either they may even lose this week to Stanford, going to Stanford, on the farm primetime game. Um,
Stanford loves to do that.
yeah. So I mean, they're definitely not making the playoffs this year by any means. Especially if Oregon would even go turn around and run the table, playoff committee is going to look at them and go, "You got blown out by 40 some points by Georgia. Like we're not putting you in there to see that again."
Yeah.
Um, but I think the way both USC and Oregon have recruited alone this year is spectacular. I think they're going to have great rosters going forward. Um, is it going to come around in time by the when USC and UCLA leave for the Big Ten? Probably not. But outside of those three schools, though, I would argue, yeah, the Pac-12 is probably dead. Arizona State travels to Oklahoma State this week. I don't think that's going to be a close game. I see Oklahoma State just pummeling them. Um, Washington, we still need to wait and see if their new head coach can turn that around. Oregon State looked really good against Boise State last week. They have a tough road game at Fresno State this week. But again, I mean that's not resume building wins for me to say, hey, this is a team that's back. Um, they absolutely have that possibility. My biggest concern is again that there's three teams at the top. You look at the SEC, yeah, you have two clear teams at the top, but you have a lot of competition below that. You had UCLA barely beat an FCS opponent last week with like 30 fans at the stadium. Um, and so things like that lead me to believe, yeah, I think everybody sees the Pac-12 is dying. In 2 years, when USC and UCLA leave, I absolutely think this is a dead conference. People are going to try and abandon ship. But I think for those next 2 years, there's enough there to salvage that it's on life support. I wouldn't say it's 100% dead yet, but time will tell with that. Next up, are you buying or selling that DJ will not last the season as starter at Clemson?
Yeah, so again, I think I have to be buying this one. I debated it a little with myself this morning. I was like, well, they do trust him. They do keep putting him in. Maybe they'll let it play out. But he was playing Georgia Tech last week as the number 5 ranked team in the nation, and really the first half, it might not have been the whole first half, but nonetheless, there was a good portion of the game at the beginning where they struggled. And again, I know week 1, yada yada yada, but Georgia Tech should have had the same issues week 1 as, what Clemson did. And granted, they ended up blowing them out come the end of the game, but there was a very choppy start at the beginning. And I think it all comes down to DJ because, like you said, they brought the freshman in. He looked great. The team was moving the ball. The team looked like you thought Clemson was going to look. Um, Now, maybe this week is enough for him to sling the ball around, get a couple passes to go, score a couple touchdowns. Maybe he gets some confidence and carries that throughout the season. But I think he had plenty of chance last year, plenty of chance through the offseason, and then week 1 against a weaker Georgia State team or Georgia Tech team, and you know, pretty much like if you look at his stats, if you didn't know anything about football, you'd be like, oh, he did pretty decent. But to watch the game, he definitely did not look like what you would want out of your quarterback as a 5th ranked team looking to make a college football playoff push and even a college football championship push.
Yeah. I mean, this is a game everybody going in thought Clemson was a clear, like, even it was going to look a lot like Georgia and Oregon on Saturday.
Yeah.
DJ was just super underwhelming for me at QB. I'm also buying this. I think the fans don't want to see it anymore. I mean, after his super underwhelming season last year, and now he has competition behind him, good player behind him that has come in and shown what he can do in prime time. That was a really not a super close game, but I mean, Georgia Tech was still threatening within 2 scores, and he goes out and puts them ahead a couple more. I was just more upset because I took Georgia Tech at plus 21.5, and I think they lost by like 24. So of course they did. Um, but I mean that happens. It is what it is. Um, but yeah, I think absolutely DJ does not make the rest of the season as the starter. I think he gets benched. He's going to see playing times when they play, subpar schools like Furman and things like that. A lot of people on Oregon's Twitter page have been joking that he's going to transfer there next year, and I hope that God he does not. Um, but we shall wait and see. And the very last buying or selling, Florida State is an ACC contender.
Yeah, I guess I might as well end the day buying everything and just say I'm buying this. We just got done talking about Clemson and how they have a big question mark at quarterback right now. The freshmen look good, but you're comparing a little experience with a little extra more talent, which could definitely shake up the team and see them maybe drop a game somewhere. Like you said, DJ gets them in a hole they can't fill, or the freshman can't fill. And I think that Florida State looked good. Now, I have my doubts about in my comments about LSU, which we had talked about on the show this past weekend, but Florida State looked good, especially compared to how they've looked the last couple years. So I think that at the very least, contender is a good word. I think if Clemson drops a game, Florida State's schedule is a little forgiving for them. There's a few tough games for them in there, but I think that they can be contending. I don't know if they're going to necessarily be winning the ACC, but contending is the key word here, and I think they have the team to do it.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell this for now. I think the top of the ACC is still a little too heavy for them. You got NC State, Miami is still looking really good. Again, I think Wake Forest is back now with Sam Hartman coming back from his blood clot issue. If Clemson decides to bench DJ, I still think even with one loss, they are still contending for the ACC crown this year. And so for me, I think Florida State is a much improved team over last year. I mean, this is definitely a team I see making a bowl game. I think Mike Norvell, with his back against the wall, has got two statement wins out of the way. Granted, yeah, they beat an FCS team week one, but guess what? They lost to an FCS team last year, so that's a big win for him. And then you go into Louisiana again, not technically a home game for LSU by any means, but you're still playing in their backyard. It was much like Oregon and Georgia. You beat them in what I thought was a hostile environment, and they got a surprising upset win. There's Mike Norvell's statement win. He just beat an SEC team. So again, I think Florida State is much improved, but I'm going to sell that they're contending for the ACC until I see more this year. I mean, if they rip off a run here of 10 straight wins and they go 12-0, on top of their 2 wins they have already, yeah, I mean, they're ACC contenders, but I just need to see a little bit more. I need to see consistency out of the offensive side. The second half last week, they went stagnant in the second half, much like Notre Dame did. Their defense bailed them out. And so, like I said, I just need to see a little bit more, and then that's when I'll buy. Moving on, it is our favorite time of the week where we give you terrible betting advice to go blow all your money. Nick, we'll start with you. We'll get your cash out pick for this week.
Yeah, so up first, if anybody's seen this on FanDuel, I'm probably not the only person who decided it. Iowa State at Iowa. I have it written down as under 39.5. I believe it opened at under 40.5. Either way, I'm taking it. Uh, we seen Iowa last week against South Dakota State, one of them Dakota States, and they won 7-3, and 4 of those points being from 2 safeties. So I don't. Iowa's offense is absolutely trash. It's been trash for 4 years at least that I can think of. The defense is always good. The defense stops people from scoring. So I think this is going to be a very low scoring game. The over under could have been 19.5, and I still might have taken it. And for my second bet, I have Vanderbilt plus 11.5. They're coming off 2 wins to open the season. One of them being a huge week 0 win in Hawaii. Sorry. Whatever this, like 63-10 or whatever that was. Now, granted, they had a little closer game at home this week, or this past week against Elon, I believe it was. They won by 11. But I think this is a team that has a lot of momentum, a lot of positivity and confidence around themselves. And I think that Wake Forest is going to come in there. Hey, we got our QB back. This is an unranked team. Yeah, they're at home, but we should be able to, win this easily. And I think that Vanderbilt's going to keep it close. And we talked about it last week. I'll talk about it every week because it's always relevant. If an underrated team can keep a game close towards the end of the game, they have a really good shot at winning. So,
Yeah, absolutely.
Vandy 11.5 sounds safe as hell.
Back to the Iowa State-Iowa game. Somebody simmed the game in NCAA 14.
Oh, God.
And the final score was 9-6 with like 4 safeties. And I was like, good God. Which I could absolutely see happening, by
That's
the way.
hilarious.
Moving on, we have SLADE'S bets here. He decided to show us up and went with 3 this week. He took Florida -6 at home against Kentucky. Personally, I think this is good. Every time these 2 teams play, it always turns into a last-minute shit show, and whether it's a blocked field goal or something like that. So a touchdown win is I don't want to say it's a stretch. I mean, it's definitely in the realm of possibility. But crazier things have happened in this game. He takes the Pitt money line at home against Tennessee. He's in Pittsburgh, so I guess he felt like he needed to take that.
Yeah.
He's the
How do you
worst
get the
Penn
good
State
interview
fan
from him?
I've ever seen. Just
Yeah.
takes Pitt with all of his picks, puts money on him. Just he's a fake Penn State fan. That's what he is. And he takes Baylor +3 at BYU. I this is gonna be a one-score game, and I'm super excited to see that tonight. So I'm taking Baylor in that game, but we shall wait and see what the final score is. Moving on to my cash out picks. Uh, Speaking of BYU Baylor, I think it's disrespectful. The over is set at 53.5. One of the best offenses in the Big 12. And you're talking about a BYU team that put 21 points up in the first quarter last week against USF. Granted, Baylor's defense is going to be a little bit better, but I see this game going in pushing the 40s, definitely in the 30s though. So I'm taking the over at 53.5. And I went the opposite of the slate. I took Kentucky +6. I think this is a really close game. It comes down to a late field goal, and so I am going to take Kentucky at +6. Moving on to our next segment.
Some good
Our
bets this week.
Yeah,
I mean,
I,
a couple of Slades made me question, but he's his own man. I
yeah,
won't
we
take it.
always question Slade's bets, and then he
Yeah,
bets on
yeah,
Nerfies
you,
and wins like $100,000.
yeah.
Not that much, but I mean enough to go to Turks and Caicos. Moving on, it is time for our upset alerts. Nick, we'll see who you're putting on upset alert first.
Yeah, so we talked about it, and I'm kind of glad you have the feelings that you have because I think we can get a little conversation going about this. But I have Wake Forest on upset alert. I talked about it. Vandy's coming off their huge win, week 0, an 11-point win at home last week. Plenty of momentum, plenty of confidence. This is a Wake team that whether it's Wake Forest 2 years ago or 2 years from now or whatever it is, Wake Forest is always one of those teams that is going to let the teams they should beat hang around. We see it all the time with them. And like I said, Vanderbilt, especially with the momentum that they have, the confidence they have, if Vanderbilt is within 10 points by halftime, I think this is a game that they can walk away with a stroke in the win column.
Um, See, I'm disagreeing with you. I think I've said it enough times on the show. Sam Hartman has finally come back, which first of all, regardless, it's great to see that. Super happy to see him healthy. Um, But I think their offense is just gonna be too much for Vandy. Uh, we're talking about 2 really subpar opponents for Vandy in Hawaii, who got their brakes blown out by, I keep saying brakes blown off, that's my favorite saying, I guess. Um,
So,
but they got blown out by, Western Kentucky last week. They play Michigan this week, which I think is gonna be just as bad. And then an FCS school, which, like you said, it got a little closer towards the end, a little bit closer. Again, I think this is a much improved Vanderbilt team from what we've seen the last few years. They can be pushing bowl eligibility this year, but I think Wake Forest just has too much firepower on the offensive side. Yeah, they do have a lot of question marks on the defense still, and they need to definitely pick it up on that side of the ball. Um, but for me, I think Sam Hartman's the difference. He was for much of the year last year, I had him as my Heisman contender. If he can find anywhere near that same rhythm last year and cut down on the interceptions, again, I think he can be in that conversation. And then when they play UNC here in a few weeks, I'm really excited to see that game with the way Drake May has exploded onto the scene there. That is going to be a high scoring shootout, just like it was last
oh
year.
yeah.
Moving on, Slade's upset alert. He goes with Oklahoma State at home. I thought this was a little controversial. Um, again, Arizona State definitely is one of those teams where every year they seem to just pull out a random team and just surprise them and upset them. I don't think Oklahoma State's that team. What are your thoughts, Nick?
Yeah, I kind of again we're gonna do our picks later. And just as a little blurb I have in my picks, I did say don't sleep on Arizona State. However, I like you. I don't think this is the game that Arizona State does it, but they're usually good for at least one of these games. At some point in the year, so I can't count them out. I personally wouldn't put money on this game, um, just because of Arizona State and the way that they are. But I don't see them. Barring a miracle, I don't see them beating OK State.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have too much uncertainty on the offensive side of the ball, especially at quarterback and wide receiver. They have the potential there, but can they put it all together? Going into one of the most hostile environments in the Big 12, this is a stadium I really want to get to see because when you watch on TV, like the sidelines have like 5 yards, and it looks like everybody's sitting directly on top of the field. It makes really tough for any opponent to go in there and walk out with a victory. Um, but I think the way their QB looked last week, um, again, I think it's week 1. Yeah, you can't read too much into it. It was against Central Michigan. They let up way too many points there towards the end of the game. So I'd like to see their defense tighten it up. Um, but I think their QB is going to be just enough to push them over the top this week. Um, and so I'm going to go against Oklahoma State getting upset. But again, we've seen wilder things in college football. Moving on, my upset alert, and this is probably a little bit surprising after just how much hype we've given them, but I'm going with Notre Dame at home. I honestly almost went with Penn State, but I didn't think I thought my sister might kick me out if I did that.
That's
Um, but with Notre Dame, I think Marshall is a very underrated team. I think they have a lot of firepower on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, their defense is the biggest question mark. But for me, my biggest issue with Notre Dame is, again, can we see offensive production stay at a high rate throughout a full game? If they build up a big lead in the first half, they go into halftime, but their offense just goes dead silent in the second half. Marshall can sneak back into that game and threaten Notre Dame. Do I think they absolutely do that? No, I think Notre Dame still gets the win. They always seem to find a way to win these games at home, especially early in the season. They wait till later in the year to just get blown out by, again, like a USC or Clemson, something like that. But I think this is definitely a team Notre Dame needs to watch out for. They can't take this game lightly at all. Again, like I said, Marshall's a very underrated team. This is a team 3 years ago that was undefeated going into the very last week of the season. They lost to Western Kentucky at home in like 4 overtimes. Um, so not somebody to be taken lightly at all. And so if Notre Dame doesn't watch their back and be careful here, they can absolutely be upset. Um, but moving on, I did want to talk about the Penn State game real quick. Um, I think Ohio is a very overlooked team. Penn State looked great at times last week, but there was definitely a lot of question marks there. And I feel like Ohio is definitely one of those teams where if you let them hang around in that game, it can get ugly in Happy Valley. But you're the Penn State fan here. I want to get your thoughts.
Yeah, so definitely not a game that I've overlooked. We've seen Ohio, everybody talks shit on Ohio, but they are a pretty decent team, especially for, somebody like us. We just got done a tough road game at Purdue last week for week 1. We have some other games coming up. I believe Auburn is next week. In Auburn, it might be 1 week later. Is it next week?
It's next week.
Okay, yeah. I said it with confidence, but started to doubt myself.
Yeah.
Say this is a great trap game if you're Ohio. We just got to go out on the field, do what we need to do. The key for me, honestly, is the run game. We talked about it last year when it was pretty much non-existent, and even last week, we ran the ball better than what we had last season, but we need to keep the ball on the ground, especially a team like this. I think that we do what we need to do, and we want to try to get Drew in the game. Obviously, everybody has their issues with Sean Clifford, and every Penn State fan in the stadium last week was shouting for Drew to come in. He came in. Everybody wanted him to stay in. But I think this is a good week for Clifford to kind of get his head straight, see the field, make the throws you need to throw, um, let your team score points, and then let your freshmen come in and clean up the mess at the end of the game. So I'm slightly nervous. I can't lie. I'm slightly nervous.
I
So
mean, speaking of cleaning up messes, I'm sure that janitor would love the mess he had to clean up after Clifford left in the locker room at halftime.
yeah.
But then real quick, I think I hate to say it, but I think Oregon's on upset alert too. If their offense plays like they did last week, Eastern Washington has a lot of firepower. They can definitely put points on you in a hurry. So
I
I'm
thought
not
about
taking
it,
this
but I
week
wasn't about to
easily at
put the
all. No,
juju on the
no,
show.
but I am not. I'm not taking this week easy at all. Um, but it is time for our game picks, and then we have our first ever guest picker on the show. We were super excited to have our guest on.
Sure.
Going forward, if you are watching this, if you want to be a guest picker, DM us on Instagram, TikTok, or even Twitter, and let us know what week you want to come on. We would love to have guest pickers on here. But without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, my sister Jennifer and
And the
my
baby.
nephew Paxton. Yeah.
Is Paxton making picks too, or I
Yeah.
feel like that's a little unfair. He's probably going undefeated.
Yeah. But it is time for our picks. So the first game up, we have South Carolina at Arkansas. Jen, you're the guest. You get to go first. Who are you taking?
Oh, Paxton is taking Arkansas.
All right, we're taking Arkansas at home there. Nick, who do you have?
Yeah, I also got Arkansas. They look great against Cincinnati, but don't sleep on South Carolina.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a great game. I think South Carolina is going to be a surprising team in the SEC. This is an early start. It can definitely be dangerous. But I think Arkansas just has a little bit too much on offense. KJ Jefferson's a great quarterback. And so I think they have just enough to get it done at home. Slade also goes with Arkansas, and I as well. I'm going with Arkansas. So as you know, that means South Carolina is going to win.
Congrats.
Moving on, but that game is at 12 p.m. on ESPN. Arkansas is an 8-point favorite. The over/under is set at 53. Our next game up, we have Wake Forest at Vanderbilt. The Wake Forest is a 12.5-point favorite. The over/under is set at 65.5. Jen, you're up first.
Upset. Go Vanderbilt.
We're going with
I like the
Vanderbilt
way
there.
she thinks.
Nick, I think we already know who you're taking.
Yeah, give them 2 in a row.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I will say you love to ride your upset of the week, and then your bets, and then your picks are always the same. So, moving on, Slade takes Wake Forest at home. Again, I've said it enough times on this episode. I think Sam Hartman is just too good for Vanderbilt, and they get the road win. Moving on, we have Alabama at Texas. Alabama's a 20-point favorite. The over/under set at 65.5. Jen, who are you taking?
Alabama.
Taking Alabama on the road. Nick? Yeah, horns
Give me
down.
Bama.
I will say I already know Slade's pick, but I'm genuinely surprised as much as he talks about Texas.
I know.
But he goes with Alabama here, and I go with Alabama as well.
He
I
might think
said
Texas is back, but he does understand that Alabama is.
I don't think Texas will ever be back enough to beat Alabama. But for me,
There is an ass tattoo on the line if they do in the next 5 years, though. So.
yeah. Well, that's just the conference, but
Yeah, that's true.
for me, I just don't see Texas having anywhere near enough firepower or defensive ability to stop. I think 20 points is on the light side, but it is what it is. Moving on, we have a Big 12 or an old Big 12 matchup. We have Missouri visiting Kansas State. Kansas State is a 7.5-point favorite. The over/under is set at 56.5. Jen, who are you taking?
We are taking Missouri.
Going with the upset on the road. Nick, who do you got?
Well, I don't hate that pick, but I gotta go with K-State. They're at home. They're coming off a 34-0 blowout of South Dakota. Granted, South Dakota probably has like 40 people on their team, but nonetheless, K-State.
Yeah. I mean, I think Missouri can definitely have a great team this year. I need to see more out of them on offense first. Slade goes with Kansas State, and I do as well. I think Kansas State is a sleeper team in the Big 12, and so we shall wait and see. But this is going to be a great game. I always like when these old conference matchups get together. It makes for a lot of fun. Moving on, we have Washington State at Wisconsin. Wisconsin is a 17.5-point favorite. The over/under set at 49.5. Jen, who are you taking?
Big Ten, Wisconsin.
All righty. Nick, who you got?
Yeah, I'm also going with Wisconsin. They're heavy favorites. I think they're just too much for Washington State to handle.
Yeah. So he goes with Wisconsin. I went with Washington State.
Ooh.
I think Wisconsin is usually sleepy the first part of the season. I think Washington State can put up a lot of points in a hurry. And so I go with them with the upset on the road. Moving on, we have Tennessee at Pitt. Arguably the game of the week. This will be at 3:30 on ABC. Tennessee is a 6-point favorite. The over/under is set at 67. Jen, who are you going with?
We are going with Pitt.
The Penn State fans always seem to get
Jesus
around here.
Christ.
God, Nick, who are you going with?
I'm going with Tennessee. I think this is where Pitt realizes everything that they lost last year. I think they still have a talented team around them, but Tennessee also looks good, and they're going to want the win more than Pitt does. Fuck Pitt.
Again, Slay, the fake Penn State fan, goes with Pitt at home. I'm going with Tennessee as well. I think their offense is just too much. Again, like you said, I think this is the game where Pitt's losses from last year catch up with them. And so I'm going with Tennessee on the road. I think it's a great game regardless, but Tennessee is too much. Next game up, probably the worst game of the week. We have Iowa State at Iowa. Iowa's somehow a 3.5-point favorite. The over/under is set at 40.5. Jen, who are you taking?
You're going Iowa.
Alrighty. Nick, who do you got?
Yeah, I tossed and turned about this. I honestly think the winning score of this game is probably going to be 10, if it's even that high. But I had to go with Iowa State. I just don't think that Iowa has enough offense to move the ball. We seen it last week against a far inferior defense than Iowa State. So that's what I got to go with.
Slade goes with Iowa State as well. I do too. I think they have that muffed punt on their mind from last year, where the guy took out his own teammate trying to catch it. But I don't think Iowa has any offense here. Yeah, their defense looks good, but I think Iowa State is able to at least put up 2 touchdowns, which Iowa clearly can't compete with. So moving on, our next game, we have Kentucky at Florida. Florida opens as a 6-point favorite. The over/under is set at 52. Jen, who are you taking?
Florida.
Well, Florida at home. Nick, who do you got?
I'm back to agreeing with Jen here. I got Florida. I think this is going to be a great game. This could also be the game of the week. To me, home field advantage is the only difference here between these two teams, and I think it's going to be like a 3-point game.
Yeah. Slade takes Florida as well. I'm going with Kentucky. Like you said, this is going to be a great game. Whenever these two teams get together, it always turns into an instant classic. And so I'm super excited to see this game. It's going to be a lot of fun. There's always some weird things that happen in the middle of the game. But moving on, we have Slade's upset of the week. We have Arizona State at Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State is a 12.5-point favorite. The over/under is set at 57. Jen, who are you taking?
Oklahoma.
Taking Oklahoma State at home. Nick, who do you got?
All right, we're back on the same vibes. I got Oklahoma State again. Like I said earlier, don't sleep on Arizona State, but I just don't think that they have the team. I don't think this is the team that they get their signature win from.
We said it earlier. Slade's going with Arizona State here. Again, this is the team that can upset people. I just don't see it happening this week at Oklahoma State, and that's why I'm taking Oklahoma State at home. Moving on, the last game, probably my game of the week. I think the one I'm most excited to see. We have Baylor visiting BYU. BYU opens as a 3-point favorite at home. The over/under is set at 53.5. Jen, who are you taking?
Baylor.
He's taking Baylor on the road. Nick, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm also going Baylor on the road. I know I should because I talked shit on them last week. They were my upset alert and they dropped 21 in the first quarter. But I think that was a fluke. I think Baylor's gonna come into BYU and show them what real gaming on the field looks like.
Yeah. Slade goes with Baylor here as well, and so do I. So first of all, that means BYU is
Yeah.
going to win.
Congrats, BYU.
But again, this is going to be a high-scoring game. But I think Baylor just has a little bit too much on the offensive and defensive side of the ball for BYU to overcome. But I think that's going to be a great environment at BYU. Like I said, this is a game I'm probably most excited for this week. And so I think it's going to be a great nightcap. And that will do it for week 2 of Out of the Tunnel. We thank you guys so much for joining us again. Thank you to our guest picker for coming on. Again, if you guys want to join us,
Got the pom-pom too. I didn't see it.
He's got the white from the Auburn game last year.
Nice.
But yeah, if you guys want to join us as a guest picker, like I said, just DM us. Thank you again so much for checking us out and spending your Saturday mornings with us. Head over to our Instagram, Twitter, and our TikTok, and please follow us. And we will see you guys on Thursday with our next episode of the Jack Wagon Sports Podcast. Enjoy your Saturday and have a great day.
Yep. See you guys.
Oh, you were supposed to answer that, Nick.
What?
You were supposed to answer that. She said,
all I heard was like because like my shit was being weird. So I was like, answer what? Like, what have I?
All right. So
I don't know how sensitive my mic is. I was about to yell into it.
Have a good day.